In 1993, a 17-year-old stood over a riverbank, watching a woman drown. His own plan, his own hands. How does a teenager reach that point? And what happens when justice decides their fate? This video dives into 6 young offenders, all under 21, who faced America's harshest punishments, death sentences or life behind bars, for crimes that left families broken and communities stunned. Why did these teens cross the line? Could anyone have stopped them? And when society locks them away forever? Or worse? Let's get started. Christopher Simmons. In 1993, a 17-year-old from Missouri sat with friends. Christopher Simmons said he'd kill someone, dump the body, and walk free because he was too young for real consequences. Born in Fenton, Missouri, Simmons grew up in a home frayed by conflict. His parents split when he was young, leaving him bouncing between households. By 17, he was a lanky high school junior, more known for skipping classes than causing trouble. School reports noted his short temper and failing grades, but nothing screamed danger. He hung with a rough crowd, drawn to petty theft and late-night stunts. Yet neighbors called him unremarkable, a kid adrift, not a monster waiting to strike. But on September 8, 1993, something shifted. Simmons didn't act on a whim, he planned. Over days, he scouted his neighborhood, settling on a target. 46-year-old Shirley Crook, a quiet woman who lived nearby with her husband, Stephen. He told his friend, 15-year-old Charles Benjamin, they'd rob her house, tie her up, and get rid of her to avoid witnesses. Simmons later admitted he picked Shirley because her husband worked nights, leaving her alone. Around 2 a.m. on September 9th, the two crept through her backyard, pried open a window, and slipped inside. Shirley woke to footsteps. She sat up in bed, heart racing, and saw Simmons. "Chris?" she said, recognizing him. Her voice trembled as she begged them to leave. Instead, Simmons grabbed electrical tape, bound her wrists, and taped her eyes shut. Benjamin hesitated, but Simmons pushed on, dragging Shirley to her own van. They drove 20 minutes to Castlewood State Park. On a narrow railroad bridge, Simmons stopped. Shirley, still blindfolded, pleaded for her life. Simmons ignored her, wrapped more tape around her face, and shoved her off the edge. She fell 15 feet into the shallow water, unable to free herself. Shirley drowned, her body found hours later by a fisherman. Back home, Simmons bragged to friends about the rush, certain no one would pin it on him. Police cracked the case in days. Simmons' boasts reached a classmate who alerted authorities. On September 10th, officers pulled him from school. At first, he played coy, claiming he was at home all night. But under questioning, he folded, confessing every step, how he chose Shirley, taped her, picked the bridge. His friend Benjamin backed the story, taking a plea for a lighter sentence. Simmons faced trial as an adult in 1994. Prosecutors called him cold, detailing his weeks of planning and casual attitude after the murder. They played his confession, where he laughed about dodging big trouble. The defense argued his age mattered. 17-year-old brains, they said, act on impulse, not evil. They pointed to his broken home, his stepfather's strict hand, and no prior violent record. The jury didn't buy it. After 3 hours, they voted for death. At 18, Simmons landed on Missouri's death row, one of the youngest there. In 2002, his lawyers appealed, arguing the death penalty for teens violated the Constitution. By 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed, ruling in Roper v. Simmons, that no one under 18 at the time of their crime could be executed. The decision, driven by Shirley's death, cited science showing teens' brains aren't fully wired for consequences. It saved Simmons and 71 others nationwide, commuting their sentences to life without parole. The ruling reshaped justice, ensuring no teen would face a death chamber again. Shawn Sellers. In 1985, a 16-year-old from Oklahoma walked into a convenience store, chatted with the clerk, then pulled a gun and fired. His first kill, but not his last. Shawn Sellers grew up in Oklahoma City. Born in 1969, he faced chaos early. His mother, Vonda, and stepfather, Paul Bellafato, moved often, dragging Shawn across states. Court records later described a home laced with neglect. Vonda's temper flared, and Paul's discipline veered harsh. By 15, Shawn was a bright but withdrawn kid, reading horror novels and dabbling in Dungeons and Dragons. Friends noticed his fascination with darker ideas, but no one saw a breaking point. At Norman High School, he kept to himself, scribbling in journals about power and rebellion, hints of a mind turning inward. That darkness took shape in 1985. Sellers, nearing 17, claimed an obsession with occult rituals fueled his actions, though prosecutors later called it a calculated excuse. His first crime came on September 8, 1985, at a Circle K store near his home. Robert Bauer, a 41-year-old clerk, worked the night shift to support his family. Sellers knew him from late-night soda runs. That evening, Sellers walked in, asked about snacks, then drew a .357 revolver, stolen from Paul's collection, and shot Bauer in the head. Blood pooled on the counter as Sellers grabbed $125 and fled. He told police later he wanted to feel killing, no personal grudge against Bauer. The act was cold, deliberate, and left a widow and 2 kids grieving. 6 months later, on March 5, 1986, Sellers struck closer to home. He crept into his family's trailer while Vonda and Paul slept. Standing over their bed, he fired the same revolver, killing Vonda, 35, with a shot to the face, then Paul, 43, through the skull. He staged the scene to look like a robbery, scattering papers and leaving the door ajar. Sellers claimed he acted in a trance, driven by rituals he'd read about. But neighbors saw him calm that morning, heading to school like nothing happened. Police didn't link the murders at first. Bauer's case sat cold, no witnesses or prints. But after Vonda and Paul's deaths, a friend of Sellers tipped off detectives. He'd bragged about taking care of problems, even joking about the Circle K shooting. On March 7, 1986, officers arrested him at school, finding the revolver hidden in his room. Sellers confessed to all 3 killings, detailing each shot with eerie detachment. He told investigators a demonic force guided him, a claim that sparked headlines. Tried as an adult in 1986, he faced 2 trials, one for Bauer, one for his parents. Prosecutors dismantled his occult defense, pointing to stolen cash in his journals, which outlined murder as freedom. The defense argued his youth and abuse, Vonda's slaps, Paul's belts, warped his mind, pushing for life over death. Psychologists testified he showed remorse, but juries saw a planner, not a victim. At 17, Sellers got 3 death sentences, a rarity for someone so young. By 1999 at 29, he'd exhausted appeals. On February 4th, Oklahoma executed him by lethal injection, one of only 22 juveniles executed in the U.S. since 1976. Sellers' execution, one of the last for a teen crime before a 2005 ban, stirred questions about punishment versus second chances. Boyd Malvo. In October 2002, a 17-year-old crouched in a car's trunk, aiming a rifle at strangers across Washington, D.C. suburbs. Boyd Malvo, barely a year into his American life, became half of the deadliest sniper team the nation had seen. Born in 1985 in Kingston, Jamaica, Malvo grew up with a single mother, Una James, who moved often for work. His childhood was unsteady. Schools changed, money was tight, and discipline came sharp. By 15, he was bright but lonely, craving stability. In 2001, Una took him to Antigua, where he met John Allen Muhammad, a 41-year-old drifter with a charismatic grip. Muhammad, a Gulf War veteran, saw Malvo as a son or a soldier. They bonded over survival drills and anti-American rants, filling gaps Malvo's life lacked. When Una moved them to Florida, Malvo fled to Muhammad in Washington state, calling him Dad. By 17, he was under Muhammad's spell, trained to follow orders without question. That training turned lethal in fall 2002. Starting in February, Malvo and Muhammad began a trail of shootings, but October's DC rampage defined their terror. Over 3 weeks, they killed 10 people and injured 3, targeting random strangers, gas station customers, shoppers, a schoolboy. On October 2nd, James Martin, 55, fell outside a Maryland grocery store, shot through the back. The next day, 5 died. Each was struck by a single .223 caliber bullet, fired from a modified Chevy Caprice where Malvo hid in the trunk, aiming through a hole. Muhammad scouted, Malvo shot, Though roles sometimes blurred, the pair left notes demanding $10 million to stop, taunting police with riddles. Fear gripped D.C. The spree wasn't random. It was Muhammad's war, with Malvo as his weapon. Malvo later said he was conditioned, drilled to see targets, not people. Their first D.C. area kill came October 3rd, after earlier murders in Alabama and Louisiana tied to the same gun. Police hunted relentlessly. Tips flooded in, but the sniper's car, described as a dark sedan, kept them elusive. On October 22nd, a priest in Virginia spotted the Caprice at a rest stop. FBI swarmed, arresting Muhammad and Malvo on October 24th, 2002. Inside, they found the rifle, scope, and maps marked with kill sites. Malvo, gaunt and quiet, confessed almost instantly, detailing 17 shootings nationwide. He claimed Muhammad brainwashed him, a story that divided investigators. Tried in Virginia in 2003, Malvo faced capital murder charges for Linda Franklin's death. Prosecutors called him a willing killer, pointing to his confessions and notes mocking victims. The defense argued Muhammad's control. Malvo called him God, followed starvation diets, endured military training. Psychologists testified his youth made him malleable, not evil. The jury spared him death, sentencing him to life without parole at 18. Muhammad got death, executed in 2009. Was he a victim too, or a predator by choice? In 2017, Virginia courts considered resentencing, citing his age at the time. But as of 2019, he remained in Red Onion State Prison, now in his 30s, writing letters of regret that some families reject. Evan Miller. In 2003, a 14-year-old in Alabama swung a baseball bat with enough force to end a man's life, but the night started with a simple card game. Evan Miller grew up in Moulton, a small town in Lawrence County, Alabama. Born in 1989, Evan faced hardship from the start. His mother, Pamela, struggled with addiction, and his father was absent, leaving Evan and his siblings caught in neglect. Court records later detailed abuse, beatings from Pamela's boyfriends, belts that left marks. By 13, Evan was drinking, smoking weed, and cutting himself, landing in foster care briefly before returning home. At Moulton Middle School, he was a wiry kid with a quick laugh, but teachers noted his anger, sparked by little things. At 14, he lived in a trailer park, already numb by a life that felt stacked against him. On July 15, 2003, Evan's path crossed with Cole Cannon, a 52-year-old neighbor. Cole, a divorced truck driver, liked his beer and card games, often inviting folks over to his trailer. That night, Evan and his friend, 16-year-old Colby Smith, knocked on Cole's door, looking for a place to hang out. Cole welcomed them, and the three played cards, drank whiskey, and smoked. Hours passed and Cole got loud, arguing over a lost hand. Evan, buzzed and edgy, snapped back. When Cole passed out on his couch, Evan saw a chance, not just to rob him, but to settle some deeper score. He grabbed $300 in Cole's wallet, but as they started to leave, Cole stirred, mumbling threats. Evan froze, then picked up a baseball bat by the door. He hit Cole's head once, then again, the sound echoing in the trailer. Colby watched, stunned, as Evan kept swinging, 5-6 times, cracking Cole's skull. Blood spread across the floor. To cover their tracks, Evan doused the couch with gasoline and lit a match. Flames swallowed the trailer, but Cole was already gone, his body later showing he'd died from the blows, not the fire. The fire drew police fast, and investigators found Cole's remains. Arson pointed to foul play, and neighbors mentioned Evan and Colby hanging around. Police picked them up that day. Colby cracked first, spilling the whole story: cards, drinks, the bat, the fire. Evan, defiant at first, admitted his role, saying Cole had it coming. Charged with capital murder, Evan faced trial as an adult in 2004. Prosecutors leaned hard, calling the attack vicious. Premeditated robbery turned execution. They described Cole's shattered skull, the calculated cover-up. The defense fought back, painting Evan as a product of chaos, suicidal, abused, barely a teen. They called witnesses, social workers, a sister, who spoke of his scars, both visible and not. The judge heard it all but sided with the state, At 15, Evan got life without parole. Sent to an adult prison, his youth no shield. In 2012, Miller v. Alabama ruled that mandatory life without parole for juveniles violated the Constitution. Evan's sentence, automatic, no judge's discretion, became a symbol of what needed fixing. The decision gave over 2,000 teen lifers a shot at resentencing, though outcomes varied. In 2016, Evan's term stayed life, but with parole possible someday, a nod to his age back then. Craig Price. In 1987, a 13-year-old in Rhode Island slipped into a neighbor's house and committed a murder so brutal it seemed impossible for someone his age. 2 years later, at 15, Craig Price struck again, claiming 3 more lives. Born in 1973, Price grew up in Warwick. His family life looked stable on paper. 2 parents, a modest home, but cracks showed early. Court records noted his father's strict rules clashed with Craig's defiance, and by 12, he was stealing, fighting at school, and racking up juvenile charges for petty theft. At Buttonwoods Middle School, teachers saw a charming smile paired with a short fuse. His first crime hit on September 1st, 1987. Rebecca Spencer, a 27-year-old single mother, lived 2 doors down from Price's family. Around midnight, Price broke into her home through an unlocked window, looking to steal. Rebecca woke, startled, and confronted him. Price grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed her 58 times, leaving her body crumpled in the living room. Her 2 young sons slept through the attack, waking to find their mother gone. Price slipped back home, washed off the blood, and acted like nothing happened. Police had no leads. Rebecca's murder stayed cold. By 1989, Price, now 15, escalated. On July 27th, he targeted another neighbor, 39-year-old Joan Heaton, who lived across the street with her daughters, Jennifer, 10, and Melissa, 8. Price knew them well. Joan babysat him years earlier. Late that night, he crept into their unlocked house, armed with a knife from his own kitchen. Joan stirred in her sleep, and Price attacked, stabbing her 57 times in a frenzy. Jennifer ran to help, screaming, but Price turned on her, inflicting 62 wounds. Melissa hid under her bed, but he found her, stabbing her 30 times. The girls' small bodies lay near their mothers, blood soaking the floors. Price took $40 and a radio, then strolled home, blending into the morning routine. Warwick police found the Heatons after Joan's sister checked in, horrified by the scene. The murders stunned investigators, but Price's calm unraveled the case. Days after the Heatons' deaths, he bragged to a friend about handling business, dropping details only the killer would know. The friend, shaken, tipped off police. On September 5th, 1989, officers searched Price's room, finding a bloody knife hidden under his mattress. Under questioning, Price confessed, not just to the Heatons, but to Rebecca Spencer 2 years earlier. He described each stabbing with a smirk, chilling detectives who'd seen hardened criminals show more regret. At 15, he admitted to 4 murders, earning the label of America's youngest serial killer. Rhode Island's juvenile laws tied the trial's hands. In 1989, anyone under 16 couldn't face adult court, no matter the crime. Price pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder in 1990, but the maximum penalty was detention until his 21st birthday. No life sentence, no death penalty, just 7 years in a youth facility. At 16, he entered Cranston's juvenile center, where fights and threats marked his stay. Warwick never recovered. Price's story didn't end at 21. Released in 1994, he faced new charges, assaults, extortion, in adult prisons across states. By the late 2000s and 10s, he was serving decades in Florida, still dodging parole boards. Charles Andrew Williams. On March 5, 2001, a 15-year-old walked into his California high school with his father's revolver and opened fire, turning a normal Monday into a tragedy. Charles Andrew Williams, known as Andy, grew up in Santee. Born in 1985, he spent his early years in Maryland, where his parents' divorce left him caught between a distant mother and a strict father, Charles Sr. By 1999, they'd moved to Santee, landing in a cramped apartment. Andy enrolled at Santana High School. Classmates described him as quiet, often picked on. Kids stole his shoes, shoved him in hallways, called him names. Court records later confirmed he smoked weed daily, skipped classes, and felt alone, his grades slipping. At 14, he told friends he hated his life, but no one saw a plan forming. That plan took shape in early 2001. Andy, fed up with bullying, started talking about doing something big. Friends thought he was joking when he mentioned shooting up the school, a vague threat he'd laughed off days before. On March 4th, he stole his father's .22 caliber revolver and 8 bullets from a locked cabinet. The next morning, he tucked the gun in his backpack and boarded the school bus. At 9:20 a.m., Andy walked into Santana High's main bathroom, loaded the revolver, and stepped out. He fired into the courtyard, aiming at no one and everyone. Andy fired 30 rounds, reloading twice, hitting 13 others. Andy stopped only when his gun jammed, retreating to the bathroom where police cornered him. The shooting left 2 dead and a school shattered. 11 students and 2 staff survived injuries. A security guard, Peter Ruiz, took a bullet shielding kids, his leg permanently damaged. Police swarmed Santana High within minutes, locking it down. Andy surrendered, dropping the gun and raising his hands. "It's just me," he said, voice flat. Officers found him calm, almost relieved. Questioned that day, he admitted planning the attack for weeks, targeting no one specific, just wanting to be heard. His father, stunned, told detectives Andy never showed violence at home. Charged with murder and attempted murder, Andy faced trial as an adult in 2002. Prosecutors called him deliberate, citing his stolen gun, packed ammo, and choice to reload. They played 911 calls, students sobbing as shots rang out. The defense argued his pain, bullying, depression, a father too busy to notice. Andy's mother testified from Maryland, saying she'd begged Charles Sr. to get him help. Psychologists called it a cry for attention, not cold intent, pointing to Andy's youth. He pleaded guilty to avoid a life sentence, accepting 50 years to life at 16, eligible for parole in his 60s. The shooting fueled national talks on bullying and school safety. Some blamed Andy's tormentors, others his access to a gun. In 2001, over 700 U.S. schools reported shootings or threats, making Santana a grim statistic. Today, Andy, in his late 30s, serves time in a California prison. He's earned a GED, joined therapy groups, and written apologies, though victims' families doubt his sincerity. Parole looms far off, a faint chance at best. These 6 stories, Christopher Simmons, Shawn Sellers, Boyd Malvo, Evan Miller, Craig Price, and Charles Andrew Williams, span 3 decades, yet they pull us into the same hard question. What turns a teenager into a killer? Start with their lives before the crimes. None of these teens grew up in calm, steady homes. Simmons faced his parents' bitter divorce, shuffling between rules and neglect. Sellers moved constantly, dodging his mother's temper and stepfather's fists. Malvo, an ocean away from Jamaica, latched on to a dangerous mentor to fill an empty space. Miller bore scars from abuse, his mother's addiction leaving him to fend for himself. Price clashed with a strict father, acting out with thefts by 12. Williams, uprooted to a new state, sank into loneliness under bullies' taunts. No single trauma made them killers, but instability marked every path. Broken families, missed cries for help, adults too overwhelmed or absent to notice. Schools saw warning signs too. Teachers flagged Simmons' truancy, Miller's fights, Williams' withdrawal, yet systems rarely stepped in. Then there's the question of choice versus chance. Simmons and Price planned their attacks, scouting targets days ahead. Sellers stole a gun, waiting months between murders. Malvo trained for his role, following orders but pulling the trigger himself. Miller and Williams, though, snapped in moments. Miller mid-robbery, Williams after years of slights. Were they born to harm or shaped by what surrounded them? Could someone have caught Simmons' boasts, Miller's scars, Malvo's drift? Do you think a 14-year-old like Miller can change? Or should someone like Price stay locked up for good? Could schools, parents, anyone have stepped in sooner for Williams or Malvo? Drop your thoughts below. If you found value in diving deep with us, hit subscribe, share this with someone who'd get it, and stick around for more stories that make us think.